Welcome to the video. Today we're going to be talking about grief. But not really. At least not in that way. For my master's project, I wanted to combine my practice of sound art with my interest in timbre and emotion into one point of research. Therefore, my research question was, to what extent does timbre affect the emotional output of a sonic art composition? For this research, it was necessary to understand the elements that comprise this question. Sonic art is a complex art form because it could be defined as any artwork that experiments with sound, but that is truly its only requirement. Sound art often takes the form of installations or structures that manipulate sound in experimental ways, and it allows the artist absolute freedom in what they create. No need to stick to music theory. Timbre can be defined as the perceived sound quality of a musical note, sound, or tone. It is the textural quality of a sound. Much research has suggested that timbre is particularly important because humans use it to identify changes in the environment in a survival sense, meaning we are highly attuned to timbre and it affects us significantly. There are arguments to be made that sound is particularly capable of eliciting an emotional reaction, and even my own preliminary studies for this research have found that a majority of individuals, regardless of their background in music or sound, note that sound has affected them emotionally. However, the scientific consensus currently is that it is very rare that a sound actually elicits that emotion, but rather a listener can easily identify the emotion that an artist desired to convey. With this breadth of knowledge and two preliminary studies that support this literature, and provide guidance as to creating this project and answering my research question, I was ready to tackle the artifact. My approach to answering my question was a practice-based research methodology, meaning by doing my practice, I am conducting my research. This methodology allowed me to be critical of my own practice and examine it closely so that I could understand how to manipulate timbre to exhibit specific emotions in future sound art compositions. Ultimately, this research revealed a tacit understanding of timbre in my own work, and a decisive, straightforward answer became less important. This research provided a deeper understanding within myself of sound art as a whole, as well as my own practice. What this has really shown is the importance of this research for artists to do. I have understood how incredibly necessary it is for artists to critically examine their own work. Enough about this abstract stuff. Let's get into the piece. Or pieces. The artifact that was created for this research is entitled Grief. Because this research was aimed at understanding how to convey emotion, it made sense to create a piece that centered specific emotions. For my composition, I created 5 10-minute pieces that represent the 5 stages of grief. Alright, enough of that. The 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. This project was completed in 8 weeks, 1 week for pre-production, 1 week each for the stages, and 2 weeks for finalizing the project as a whole. Each week of production consisted of recording and editing in the studio, and 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 recording and editing in the studio. In order to examine how timbre contributes to the emotional output of each piece, specific timbres were carefully selected and manipulated and tailored to each piece. In addition to the bass sounds, significant editing went into fine-tuning each sound so that it not only fit into the piece, but it told the story of each stage of grief. So if you look at the session for anger, for example, you can see kind of how my process was in putting these pieces together. So in terms of editing these sounds, all the bass sounds would be imported in, and then basically I would process the sounds as necessary, potentially bounce them, process them again, bounce them as many times as necessary, and then place them in the session like this. As you can see, there's a lot of processing that went into these pieces. EQs, distortions, compression, lots of different delays and reverbs. Almost all of these tracks are being set to the reverb, for example. The complexity of the piece is obviously dependent on which emotion was being worked on. Anger was going to be a little bit more aggressive and complex than depression, for example, which is solely a sung vocal. In addition to all of the effects as well, there was a lot of automation that went into these pieces, mainly volume automation, bringing sounds in and out to build tension and release, and that's kind of basically my process that went into making these pieces. And that's grief. If you want to listen to the pieces, you can find me on SoundCloud, but otherwise, thanks for watching.